And so, yeah, I moved out to Chicago, and in Chicago, that's where I kind of got back to being okay with like church. I actually ended up going to this church for as part of my job. We're trying to create an HIV testing center at a new part within the city within Chicago, and this church was kind of, they were on social media. They were doing some really cool stuff. They were like open and affirming and inclusive, radically inclusive, and so I went to go pick it out. And then when I went there, I heard the pastor, the preacher, the person who was speaking that day was basically a young gay man who had recovered from drug and alcohol use, and I don't know, it was just a moment where I felt like it was for me. Like I felt like he was there to share his story and for me to hear it, and for like my life to change. I then went to church every week for a really long time, and I cried every week, and no matter what, like I still went, and I went and I went, and eventually like I got involved, and at this church we could do communion, I could do the liturgy, I started leading a small group, and I could show up in like my fullness of who I was as a queer person. I could wear my little booty shorts if I needed to activities, or I don't know, I could be flamboyant. I felt like I could really be who I was. And one of the cool things is actually like this wasn't a church just for people like me, like a gay church or whatever. It was full of like straight people and old people and a diverse group of people, and it was interesting to see that. To me, I was like, I knew why I was there, and I knew why I needed to heal, but I didn't understand why people who were not like me needed to be there. And kind of through that experience, I guess it validated and it affirmed that I was having an authentic relationship with the God that I had grown up with, and was kind of, I don't know, I was healing from that loss and the trauma that was caused by the abandonment, the separation that I felt like I needed to have happen. But anywho, I then started doing. I got trained to be a lay chaplain, and that for me it's just a way of providing, being present with people in a way that no one else can be present with them around death and dying. I never really felt called to be in the hospital kind of setting and really deal with physical death and dying, but more around death and dying to self, like to our identities. For me, I had realized that I had died so much to my who I thought I was growing up. Small town, poor kid, young, like smart, but then a faggot, then an AIDS, then drug addict, then like executive director and founder of a nonprofit organization, to all these sorts of things. And eventually those things started not to matter as much, and they didn't start to define who I was, and then I was kind of left with like, well, then what am I, or who am I, or whatever. And so that caused me to like kind of really seek again, just kind of begin to kind of like I guess I have more of a spiritual experience with like myself and with the world and with the people in which the world that I was a part of.